Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to La Cueva de la Bestia. I'm your host, La Bestia, the Beast. Now I'm doing something a little bit different for the channel. This video will be in English and I'll do a re-upload in Spanish later on. Now, I'm going to tell you a spooky story, something that happened to me a while back. As you might have noticed by the title of the video, I was stalked, or cursed, I don't know what to call it, by what is known as a bruja, which is the Spanish word for witch. Now, different to most Western witches, they're not green, they don't have pointy noses and fly around in broomsticks. No, Mexican witches or brujas tend to just be women, just either beautiful women or a very ugly, deformed even woman. Now, that's not so important right now, but I'm gonna take you through this tale. What happened is that I used to live in the second floor of my parents' home. It was still under construction, so the wall my bed was facing was completely made out of glass, just a large glass panel. And I used craft paper, brown craft paper, to cover it. That left an opening of about, I would say, 2, maybe 2.5 feet. At the time, I didn't notice it was 2.5 feet. So, I had gotten this weird, mm, this weird instance of my life where I was waking up at 3 a.m. every single night. I woke up at 3 a.m. I would check my phone, put it down, and fall back to sleep. But on that particular night, I awoke and saw something moving through that space in the glass that wasn't covered by paper. I saw 2 bird legs facing what would be my left side. The legs were pointed towards the left side. Suddenly, I put on my glasses. I sat up to see what it was, and all of a sudden, the legs just turned around as if they were facing the glass, as if whatever creature was there was facing the glass. Now, where I live in Mexico City, or sorry, not in Mexico City, in a small town called Tizayuca Hidalgo, there was a somewhat small population of barn owls. In Mexican culture, barn owls called lechuzas usually are harbingers of death, of tragedy, of illness. And some people even say that brujas can turn into these barn owls, into lechuzas. So I thought, well, maybe it's just a barn owl, nothing out of the ordinary. And then suddenly, the barn owl's face, covering the entirety of that space in the glass, was staring right at me. Its dark, pitch black eyes looking directly into my soul. I felt complete fear. I was paralyzed. Then I don't know when, but I fell asleep. I just fell asleep. And that night, I had a very odd dream where I was in a field, a completely barren field. I was in a completely barren field, just dried up grass all around me, with a clear sky, and in front of me I saw a cactus, a nopalera, which is a type of cactus. And the closer I got, the larger it looked. And when I got directly in front of it, it was the size of a three-story house. It was huge, and on the very top, I saw an owl. I would say a horned owl, maybe. Then suddenly from the sky, three crows came down. The owl left, and the crows were in front, on my right and left side, all of them on this nopalera. And from under this cactus plant, I could clearly see something digging its way out. It was a fox that sat down and looked at me. Then the squawk, the hideous squawk of these crows was louder than anything I've ever heard. They attacked the fox and threw feathers and screeching and all the fight. I couldn't see anything of the fox. I felt fear for it. And once it was all done, once the feathers had settled, the crows, each one perched on its stand. The fox was rotten. It was rotten. It was full of maggots. I panicked and fearfully I stepped back. I fell into this body of water, and as I kept on swimming and swimming and swimming, and no matter how hard I swam, I could never reach the top. I awoke drowning, sweaty. I was shooken to my core. I truly feared for my life. As I lifted the sheets off of my head to see my room, I could see the three crows in my room. Three crows, perched exactly in the same position they had been in my dream. Just, of course, not in the cactus plant, rather on all of my furniture. Now, one might think, well, just a random bird who entered your home, and you heard them, so you dreamt about it. That would be the case. Except in that place of Mexico, there isn't a wild population of crows. We have magpies, but not crows. They were crows. I was afraid. I didn't know what was going on. So I went to the bus stop to see my friend. We were going to work that day. I used to work at a factory. So I told him about the incident. And he said, well, it's probably, a witch. And I said, no, I don't believe in that shit. He said, well, just look at the size of the space that isn't covered by the craft paper. I said, well, it's a tiny space. In my mind, it was probably like half a foot big. So it would have been normal for the barn owl to be that size. But no, it wasn't. He said, check it. I've been there. I've been in your room. I've seen that space. It's 2.5 feet big. I was afraid, and I went home. I measured, and yes, maybe 2.5 feet. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I just checked it off to just some weird coincidence. I thought nothing of it. That night, I decided to just sleep normally and not think too much about that. Then I suddenly awoke again at what I assume was 3 a.m. Of course, I couldn't get my phone. This being because directly above me, staring at me, was a beautiful, pale woman with long, dark hair, a gorgeous face, but her eyes were pitch black, exactly the same black the barn owl had, exactly that same darkness, that same void. I was afraid, but I was also hypnotized. I couldn't move, I couldn't yell. Might have been sleep paralysis, as far as I know. I try to remain a little bit skeptical on this. But I was hypnotized, and I fell asleep again. I don't know when, but I just knew I fell asleep again. And I had another nightmare. This time there was another teddy bear. I sleep with my teddy bear, actually. I sleep with a teddy bear whom I lovingly call Bubbles. So in this nightmare, I was in one of my older homes when I used to live in America. And I had Bubbles at my side, but in front of me there was another teddy bear. And I was afraid of it for some odd reason. In this dream I just ran off, but as I ran through the door of that room, it looked like I was outside of the room I was living in at the time. But then I thought, oh my god, Bubbles, so I ran back, tried to grab my teddy bear, but that other bear was now stuck to the wall with some weird black ooze coming out from the walls. I was afraid. Then suddenly I felt something gripping me down. Some hand, some weird appendage just grabbing me, not letting me move a muscle. Then suddenly the room started filling up with water. The wall directly in front of me just collapsed, and I could see the sun crossing the horizon time after time after time, as if the days were passing, as if it had been a year, a month. I don't know how many times the sun passed directly in front of me. Suddenly it started to flash. Then it was all pitch black, and I heard the deepest, most demonic voice I have ever heard in my entire life, saying something like, "Are you alive? Are you dead? Or are you alive? Are you awake? Or are you dead? Are you really drowning? Or are you already dead? Are you drowning? Or are you already dead?" I don't know what happened. I can't remember exactly how I woke up from that dream. All I could remember is that I woke up paralyzed, completely immobile. I tried to break free of that hold, but I couldn't move. Then suddenly I just managed to move somehow. I ran to the bus stop again to see my friend. And I told him, you know what? This is a witch. This is completely a witch. He said, I told you it was a witch. What else could it be? So I frantically asked him, well, what should I do? What should I do? He said, well, tradition dictates that you need to put a Bible under your bed. I was remaining skeptical, but I said, you know what? Let's do this. Maybe it'll help. So I got home from work. I put the Bible under my bed. And that day, or that night rather, my friend texted me. He said, you know what? Let's go out for some drinks. I said, sure. So we went out, and I got back home somewhere around 1 in the morning. While I was walking home, there was a barn owl flying directly above my house. Now, this particular owl, had that same pattern every night. I never thought much of it, and I had completely forgotten about it during these 2 days of those odd incidents. But once that owl got above my room, I could hear it screech. If you haven't heard a barn owl screech, I recommend you guys search it on YouTube. There's a lot of incredible examples. That soul-wrenching screech, I heard it. It just flew twice around my house, and it went back where it came from. I managed to sleep. I didn't wake up at 3 a.m. Nothing else happened. And from that night on, I I slept with a Bible under my bed. To this day, I don't know if it was truly a witch, if it was something else. I have no idea. All I know is that it happened. I can't explain it. I'm not saying this is proof of brujas. I'm not saying this is proof of the supernatural. But I'm also not denying it. I'm open to all possibility on this. And well, to this day I haven't felt anything. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if it was all just dreams, sleep paralysis. Who knows what it would have been, but I'll leave you to decide on what was it. I just tell my tale. You can write down in the comments what you think, if you've had any similar experiences with the supernatural. And if you're interested in more of this content, you could always uh, write in the comments any story you might have that you would like me to narrate. I have another story, but that's reserved for probably next week. Well, and that's all I have for today. Have a good night, my little beasts. Quick side note, if you are interested in more of this content, you should subscribe and follow. I will try to upload more videos in English. I also have content in Spanish for all my Latino brothers and sisters, of course, and everything in between.